Okay, today we're going to get started with some fractions. We're going to add and subtract our fractions. So make sure you're on the 3.7 video notes page. Okay, the first thing I need you to jot down are the rules. So when you are adding fractions, there's just a few notes I made here. You have to have a common denominator. Okay, find that common denominator whatever way you're most successful. Okay, we like to use the LCD, the least common denominator, whenever possible. Okay, add your numerators and then keep your denominator. So write that down. All right, so on example 1, I have the question written down. So 1/6 plus 1/3, and I went ahead and drew a picture for it. Some teachers like to use fraction bars, which is great, but it's a little bit hard for me to draw fraction bars out. So we're going to use these little picture models to help us think about why we need a common denominator. So on this first one, I'm going to shade in 1 here so that my picture is representing 1/6. Okay, do you agree with that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 pieces to my pizza and I ate 1. Plus my 1/3. So I have 1, 2, 3 slices and we eat 1 piece. So that is what I'm adding. But if you notice, the 1/6 slice is much smaller than the 1/3. So it doesn't make sense for me to add 1 plus 1 because they're not the same size. So this is why we need the common denominator. If I slice this pizza up a little bit more, I can make it so it has 6 pieces. But after I do that, how many pieces are missing? Well, I have the 2. 2 of them are red, plus my 1/6. So that's what I'm doing when I find a common denominator. I'm making sure my pizza is cut into same size pieces. That's only when we are ready to add or subtract our fractions. Okay, so now I have a common denominator and I add the 1 plus 2, the numerators, and my denominator is the same. You do all that work to find the common denominator, don't lose it, okay? So it is 3/6, which we all know is 1/2. Okay, so there we go. We have eaten half of our pizza. Okay, so I scrolled down a little bit here, so I'm going to go underneath, and I have 1/3 plus a negative 3/9. So we got to deal with our integer rule, and I don't have common denominators. Now, some teachers tell you to take 3 times 9, so that means I would be using 27 as my denominator. And that's fine if you like doing it that way, but just know that you're kind of putting more work on yourself because you're going to have to simplify a lot at the end. But if you can't ever find a common denominator, that is a way to do it. You can just multiply your 2 denominators together, and you know that number is going to be a multiple for both. If you don't want to use 27, another way to think about it is trying to find multiples that they have in common. So we're looking for the least common multiple. So if I count up by 3s, I have 3, 6, 9. So I'm going to use 9 as my LCD, my least common denominator. So to change this, I have to multiply by 3. That means I also have to multiply my numerator. So 1 times 3 is 3, and 3 times 3 is 9, plus our negative 3/9. All right, so I have a common denominator. Oops, forgot my negative. Okay, so now I'm going to add them together. All right, so instead of drawing pizza for you this time, because, you know, a negative slice of pizza would be kind of weird, I drew a number line off to the side here, and I have 9/9 right here at the end being my 1, and then on the opposite side I have -1 representing negative 9/9. So I can draw this on a number line just like we did with our whole numbers and our integers. So the first one is a positive 3/9. So this is 1/9, 2/9, and 3/9. So this number right here is or dash is representing 3/9. So just like with our whole numbers, we drew a vector from 0 to 3/9. Our next one is a or adding a negative. So when we have negatives, we go to the left 3/9. So 1, 2, 3. And we ended up at 0, which makes sense because these are opposites. All right, but that's another way to visualize what is happening when we're adding our fractions. But since we had negatives, I thought the number line would be a good visual for you. All right, next I'm going to give you one to try on your own. Find the common denominator and add up the fractions. Okay, hopefully you can find some room on your page. I'm having trouble moving everything around, but on your own, I'd like you to try 2/3 plus 1/8. Here's what my workspace ended up looking like. So I wrote down all the multiples for 3 and all the multiples for 8, and 24 is what they had in common. Multiplying both fractions by the same number and adding my numerator. Okay, again for subtraction, we have to have a common denominator. And a common denominator that I know both of them will have is 6. There's 3, 6, 9, and then 2, 4, 6, 8. So they both have a 6 as a multiple. So 2 times 3, 1 times 3, 3 times 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. That's a 3. All right, so with subtraction, the only thing we need to change from the rules we wrote on top, let me find that. So the only two words I had to change here was to subtract fractions, we're going to subtract the numerators. Okay, so that's the only thing different between adding and subtracting. So we have the 4 minus 3, which gives us 1/6. And just a quick model here, because I know some of you don't really understand fractions all that well. So I drew a plate of brownies here, and I have 6 brownies, but I only have the 4/6 left, which is our first number. So I have 4/6 of a plate of brownies, and then, I come home from school and we wipe out 3/6. So if I only started with 4/6 of a plate of brownies, I eat 3/6, I'm going to have 1/6 left over. So that's what's happened here. So a quick model for that. All right, it's your chance to try one on your own. I'm not going to give you integers, so we're just focusing on that common denominator piece. Okay, so here's the problem I'd like you to try on your own. 1/4 minus a 1/6. So try that and answer, please. Okay, so here's what my workspace ended up looking like. I needed a common denominator. I used 12. You might have used 24, and that would work too. So times both the first fraction by 3, top and bottom, and then on the second fraction times 2. I ended up with 1/12. All right, good work. All right, before we leave, I want to ask you one more question to try on your own. And in class, we're going to be working with negatives. So, your last question of the day, remind me, what is the subtraction rule for integers? Okay, we're going to need that in class. So see if you can get that one. All right, did you get your integer question correct? I wrote it all out here in case you haven't yet. But remember, subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. And in class, we talked about keep, change, change. All right, we'll use that in class. Have a great night.